Oh, I thought we just like started doing it just then.
Hey everybody, and welcome to The Ranch, which is a new podcast initiative coming out of the Oxen labs. I'm Alex, I work at Oxen, and this is Cameron, he also works at Oxen.
I work at Oxen too.
For those of you who don't know, Oxen is a blockchain project working in the Web3 space, focusing pretty much on privacy. We have a private messenger called Session, which is out, you can use it right now, and an onion router called LokiNet, which you can also use right now.
And yeah, we're going to delve into the metaverse and see all the ways that it is terrible, see all the ways that it is great, see all the ways that it can be decentralized and that it needs to be private.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about, I guess, is what we actually mean, or what everyone means, I suppose, when they're talking about the metaverse, when they say metaverse.
No one really knows. We're still at the stage where no one's quite sure.
No one's quite sure. And you see everyone's writing articles being like, what is the metaverse?
And no one can really
trying
agree.
to explain it. Everyone's kind of got a bit of a different explanation.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to that, Everybody has a different idea about what it is, or what it's going to be, or what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Or what effect it's kind of going to have. The first time I heard about the metaverse was someone that we worked with. It was a few years ago. Someone who was very early in the NFT space was talking about the metaverse and how NFTs were going to like evolve into this metaverse situation. This was maybe like a year and a half ago. And I was just like, okay, be quiet.
I remember this. Were they talking about buying like digital real estate in digital worlds? Yeah. Yeah, I kind of dismissed that at the time as well.
And yet, I think it's sort of been kickstarted by, in the mainstream at least, by Facebook rebranding to Meta.
Big time.
Suddenly everyone's talking about it. And you mentioned this to me maybe a day or two ago, saying, it seems like this thing that's been a very far distant technology or future that we could talk about or write about or make movies about. But it wasn't really it wasn't soon. But now it feels like it's not only right around the corner, but it's starting now.
It was like sci-fi. It was like a sci-fi concept. And now Mark has decided that this is what we're doing now. This is where we're diverting our resources to, and it's just going to happen. And it's kind of spooky.
Yeah, so we managed to ramble on for a few minutes there without actually addressing the question of what the metaverse was. So Cam, do you want to hit us up with your understanding of the metaverse?
The metaverse, as far as I'm aware, which, I should be aware, we're doing a podcast about it, is an AR/VR meta world that you can enter and interact with other people. I think that the main thing that has been the reason why Facebook wants to move into it now is because we're able to actually meet and interact in these spaces. We've had these spaces, but they were mostly somewhere where you would be on your own. Getting to a point now where they're starting to be able to bring people together, which is, I think, the main stepping stone that we're moving towards now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way that I kind of think about it, I suppose, is the metaverse being like the next content delivery system. At the moment we have social media and we communicate and connect with each other using text, video, voice messages, calls, etc., things like that. And the metaverse is kind of like the next step. That's the next way that we will interact with people digitally. But the metaverse is kind of claiming that it's a bit more than that, right? Like it's saying that it is going to completely change the way that we experience reality.
Yeah.
Like
You'll be
social
up in
media.
The spaceship with your robot friends playing cards.
Yeah.
You can pick any outfit you want, including the exact one that you are wearing currently in the real world.
Yeah. Like the way that we use our phones, we're still just looking through a window, right?
Yeah.
We're not experiencing it in a particularly human way. It's still like a clear gap between the digital and the real world. But the metaverse is kind of like uniting these two worlds.
Blurring the lines.
Yeah, blurring the lines, increasingly so.
Yeah.
What do you think about the metaverse? What is your opinion about this, right? And there's a lot of different directions we could go in here.
Yeah. I think that it's somewhat inevitable, and I don't like that Mark Zuckerberg wants to take us there. Something that I found really striking in the whole presentation unveiling video that they did was that they did talk about privacy, but they talked about it in the context of no one that you didn't like. other people can't come into your little metaverse home. It's like you can lock your metaverse door. There was no they removed the concept of privacy from Mark out from the context of the conversation, which I thought was troubling.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. The whole time I was watching that video, I felt like I was watching some weird, prequel to WALL-E.
Yeah.
Where a multinational corporation ruins the earth.
Yeah.
But this is you see in 70 years, a grubbed up version of this video, as the screen flickers.
Yeah. And it's exposition for the story.
Exactly.
How they got there.
But yeah, no, it's really kind of, it's just very scary.
Yeah.
I think that Facebook obviously has a really bad reputation in terms of protecting people's privacy.
Universally despised.
Yeah, but the question is, I suppose, it felt as if Facebook as a platform, as in the Facebook website, had kind of, for people like us at least, a bit like a diminishing cultural relevance.
Yeah.
People use it less. They're moving into other spaces, acquiring other platforms.
People used it because they were trapped by it.
Exactly.
People didn't choose to use it. It was just it was like a black hole. People would be on the event horizon. It's hard to get out.
Yeah.
I was reading something that Frances Hagen, the whistleblower, she was talking about how it's very classic Facebook of them to do this while they're in the middle of the crisis that she caused with all her whistleblowing.
Yeah.
Because they're just instead of solving the problems that they have, they're just let's move away as fast as we can to something else.
Yeah.
Which is, moving fast and breaking things.
Which is, I suppose, a classic. For any company, right? They're gonna do stuff like this. They're gonna try and divert attention away from the horrible atrocities that they're committing.
Only the evil ones, though.
The non-evil ones, don't have atrocities to hide.
It's true.
But yeah, I think that just coming back to that though, right? Facebook obviously, has a lot of issues with the way that they handle privacy and user privacy. And a big part of the problem, right, is just the sheer volume of data that they have.
It's too much.
And collect, right?
I want them to have less.
Because even though I was saying that people are using it less, they still have an unspeakable amount of information.
Yeah, for sure. Even on people that don't
even use Facebook, right?
Which is
an
issue.
So the thing is that the more people use it, the more data they generate, etc., the more of a problem it really is. And the thing about the metaverse, right, is that it is, at least as far as I can tell, it's going to be impossible to resist.
Yeah,
you're telling me you can go and fly over a volcano on your pterodactyl and high five your mate.
That's a good
as
time.
You do it.
It's a really good time.
You're gonna do it.
Yeah, I would do that.
And people are gonna spend a lot of time there.
Sure.
I would say, and if the uptake is high enough, the data could become insane.
Yeah,
and
the separation. Sorry, go on.
There you go.
The separation between today we use the internet and social media in our phones almost all of the time. I would say 90% of my waking hours.
Yeah.
I'm interacting with
just
I'm actively interacting with a computer device of some sort, connected to the internet, collecting data. But they had a really sneaky way of sort of subtly linking in their AR glasses into their unveiling of their whole Meta rebrand. It was like they were mentioning it without trying to actually draw attention to it. And that's going to be the big thing, is that they'll have access to everything that you are seeing.
Yeah. Which is just a crazy concept, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's going to completely change the way that we act in the world.
Yeah.
And this actually brings me to another kind of thought that I had when I was watching it. I was like, okay, so it's dressed up and it's like an anime version of it.
Yeah.
But this is reminiscent of the Matrix. Not to sound like a tinfoil hat kind of person here.
It is though.
But it feels like people are being inserted into the simulation here.
Yeah, for sure. Or have you seen Batman? Morgan Freeman would be absolutely
he would hate
appalled
this. He would hate this.
by the
He would
surveillance
walk away.
system that they're building.
He would walk away.
For sure.
I hope they're not trying to hire Morgan because he's definitely going to turn it down.
He will turn it down straight away.
But the thing that struck me, right, is obviously with the pandemic, climate crisis, just political unrest, social unrest all over the place, right? I think there are a lot of reasons that people are going to want to escape.
Yeah, for sure.
And, the Matrix kind of poses this question too. It's like knowing that the world outside is screwed, to put it nicely, and things kind of suck. Maybe you're living in like a dingy apartment and your water tap is broken, or life's just not that good, right?
You don't need to tell them about my situation at home. It's uncool, bro.
But like who is not gonna choose to go into this wonderful simulated world where everything can be good, right? And the question is, like, when are you gonna leave and why are you gonna leave? Because this is like a thing, people often talk about, what if we live in the Matrix, blah, blah, blah. But I think the more interesting question is if I told you right now, okay, we are in the Matrix for certain, right? Would you leave? Would you be like, I'm opting out, I'm going to go live in the dystopian hellhole with like thunderstorms 24/7 where there's like no food except worm meat?
Yeah, I don't mind the thunderstorms, but the gruel that they eat in the Matrix just looks terrible. And some people have called me a foodie, so... I mean, it's a big question, but probably not, to be honest, man. Probably not. I would be, I wouldn't kill Dozer, but I would be Cypher. I would be like, I want to go eat the steak.
Yeah.
Like I want to.
This is the thing, right? Like if you could have that luxury that you can have in a simulated world, because nothing is scarce. Nothing is scarce in a simulated world. Everything is bountiful.
Yeah.
Who is going to turn their back on it? And it's really challenging because it is going to change our reality, and we've got serious issues with the way that technology is changing our brains and the way we think and the way we act all the time and the way that socially we live. And this is like taking it to the radical extreme, right?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if we need to like accelerate in that direction. You know what I mean? Like we could probably just chill out a little bit.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that as well came up, right, is I was reading some research, or it was actually just like an essay, I think, from a researcher that has been working in AR, as it's now known, for like several decades. And one of the key things that they were concerned about was talking about with AR and how it can have severely positive impacts on workers. So when you're doing physical tasks, using AR to supplement the work that you're doing can improve your efficiency by up to double.
Wow, that's very efficient.
And
high efficiency.
When you think about the way that like a company maybe like Amazon might utilize this, it starts to go down a pretty dark and creepy path.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading this morning about how, like, we saw a lot of issues with they call it bossware, like spyware that bosses imposed on their workers while they were remote during the pandemic.
Yeah,
and there's a huge issue with if like you don't have a choice. You know what I mean? It's like if your employer wants you to enter the metaverse using Facebook technology at work, like you kind of have to choose between leaving the job and entering Mark Zuckerberg's
dystopian hellscape.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it. But
yeah, absolutely. And it's going to put people in a really bad position. And I think that, yes, true at work, but also true at school.
Yeah, for sure.
And other education kind of environments.
Students are, after like people in prison, like the most surveilled people in the world.
You just constantly, they have the ability to watch them. You know? We have a friend of ours who's a teacher, recently just started working as a teacher, and was shocked to walk into a classroom and realize that in real time they can see everything on the computers of their students and also everything that they're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is, obviously there's good reasons for it, but at the same time, when you then make the leap and say, okay, but what if also Facebook has access to this?
Yeah, for sure.
Or other for-profit corporations. What are the effects of that going to be? And do
The
we
slope
really
is
want to go
slippery.
down this path?
It's icy. There's moss on the slope.
Yeah.
Very easy to fall.
Yeah, exactly.
You need really good shoes, hiking shoes.
So we're painting a bit of a bad, we're giving a bad rap to the metaverse at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily all bad, right? Like, is it really just only terrible?
I'm wondering how much choice you have about whose metaverse you live in and who designs it. And at the moment, you have choices about, you're strongly influenced in one way or the other by network effects and stuff. But you have the choice to use certain technology like Session or like LokiNet, other Oxen apps that protect your privacy in the digital world. I'm hoping that there will be alternatives, but I think that's Mark's hope is the opposite. To diminish the opportunity for alternatives to proliferate and develop, and to just completely dominate the entire space, which would be an issue. But as you said, the pterodactyl over the volcano, incredible.
I can't wait to
if
fly
I could do
my
that,
pterodactyl,
sans Mark, I would. I'll totally do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's people who are working on that, right? Like, a lot of people in the NFT space are working on metaverse-related projects or trying to make their projects part of the metaverse, etc.
Yeah.
And that could be a really exciting thing.
Yeah, for sure.
A metaverse that was decentralized and was actually just like an intersection of multiple different projects, right?
Yeah.
Multiple different worlds or things that you can interact with, and you can like snap in and out between them, like websites.
Yeah.
The way that you would websites now, that would be incredible.
I think that definitely will exist, for sure.
Yeah.
And particularly because of the place that NFTs have in the metaverse. And
Yes.
the existence of digital objects and assets and whatever, and having an immutable record to actually say who owns what in the digital world is going to drive a lot of people into decentralization with the metaverse, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. And we can only hope, right?
Yeah.
But there is also a bit of responsibility, I suppose, for those, I'm going to call them Web3 projects, to also be responsible about the way that they treat privacy, security, primarily. And because, these are social spaces where people will be living their lives. And we've seen this problem crop up with other social spaces that exist now, like messengers, where a lot of the most popular messengers are just not really taking the proper precautions to protect people's privacy.
For sure.
Right?
Well, I think you'll see the issues that we have with messaging apps mirrored. I think you'll have the WhatsApp of the metaverse, and like mostly they'll have pretty good privacy protections, but also there will be pretty significant issues like metadata retention and which are like, not theoretical issues. You know what I mean? Like there's that whistleblower from the Treasury Department who is in jail right now because she thought that WhatsApp was a private messenger because that's how they market themselves. And people will end up in bad situations because of that in the metaverse context.
Yeah. I have another point to bring up here, right? And it's about online disinhibition, right? So for people who don't know, online disinhibition is that feeling or behavior that people have when they're interacting online because it's not real and it doesn't feel real. So, if I was talking to Cam instead of being a meter away from him right now, he was on, Session and I was messaging him on Session. It doesn't feel the same. The conversation doesn't feel the same and people behave differently, right? And there's a lot talking about, things like cyberbullying being a product of online disinhibition, and people basically just being meaner and less humane than they would be in a face-to-face or real situation. Obviously, this is pure real. Obviously, this is pure speculation because we're not researchers in that field. But with something like the metaverse, right, where the real world gets more mixed in with our digital interactions, but it's still not physical, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not human. It's not a human interaction. How do you think this?
It mimics the human reaction.
It mimics it, but you're talking to a dragon instead of a person.
Depending on your socioeconomic status, that will define what sort of hardware you have to enter the metaverse. And the top of the line ones, they're talking about this in the Meta unveiling presentation video, have the capacity to read micro expressions, and can convey your expression a lot more, which will give other people a lot more of the sense of what you're feeling and a lot more of a sense of real humanity. Whereas maybe if you have the cheaper ones, you will not get as much of that across and maybe have people react as such, which...
Yeah.
I
actually also saw a discussion about how they think there's going to basically be a race to zero in terms of trying to get the hardware cost down to zero so that everyone, can get in as soon as they can. Because at the moment, AR, VR technology, it's only really available to people in relatively, wealthy places.
Except for Pokemon Go.
Except for Pokemon Go. It's expensive, to get it to work well.
Yeah.
But there's going to be this huge race to zero so that everyone can just flock in.
Yeah.
But
that's where you make the real big.
That is crazy that they can get the those small human.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll be like an uncanny valley situation.
Yeah,
or
for sure.
I kind of
concerned.
surely right. It's like
there will be a point where it is
freaky.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah,
for sure.
Or do you think that our brains will just get used to it and be like, well, I don't only talk to humans now. I also talk to like the moon.
Yeah, I think that. I think that we'll get used to it pretty quickly, especially because of the way that younger generations just pick things up like that when you're native to the tech. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it'll probably be a situation where we will be in our 30s and 40s, and we'll be like, I'm not talking to these fake metaverse people. Maybe in the real world, but then like our kids will like, primarily live in the metaverse.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how this like adoption happens in the long term, is that people that are native to it just take it and run with it, and it's like it's all they know.
Yeah. But bringing it back to that online disinhibition problem, right? Because it is a problem that,
for sure.
Harassment, abuse, etc., it's high rates online. Do you think that this will mitigate or exacerbate that problem, right? Because also a lot of the time, it's much easier to log off or disassociate from, what's happening on your computer than it might be in the metaverse, right? So for people who are being targeted, it might be a lot worse. But do you think that the people will just generally be more friendly and kind?
You're kind of more present, It gives you much more of a sense of being there with someone. You know what I mean? So even though it's not the same as being with someone in real life, it's a lot more so than when you're speaking to someone on a messaging app like Session. Yeah,
right. There you go. I think I tend to agree. I think that, a lot of the disinhibition, right, comes from just it's not taking up your entire brain capacity to make choices and to interact with things because you're only semi-present. And I'm sure that everyone's had this feeling, right, where they're just on a death scroll through Twitter or, something. And you just scroll for ages, and then you've been scrolling for 10 minutes and you what? I haven't read anything. I haven't taken in any information. You're just sort of a vessel traveling through space.
Every day of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the metaverse will probably mitigate that feeling quite a lot, right? You will feel a lot more there, a lot more present, and it will feel more human. So I think that it will probably help kind of tone that down a little bit. The other thing I want to talk about, right, is because there's, as you was kind of saying before, there's this mixture of AR and VR. So there's the mixed reality where it's our real world around us, real. And as well as the imposed digital stuff. And then there's the fully simulated reality.
Like Club Penguin.
Like Club Penguin, yeah, exactly. Or Habbo Hotel, that kind of stuff. Neopets.
Yeah.
But my question is, as these things get realer and realer, and as you said, people who are, I guess, native to the metaverse, Do you think we're going to get to a point where people just log on and they never log off? They just live in the
for sure,
simulation.
Definitely. I think that like a pretty large amount of people, because like even just with gaming on regular PCs that we have now, you have people that just do it like 23 hours a day.
I've been there.
So I think that once it's the more immersive you make it, the more people just leave the real world behind, I think.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of like, that kind of begs the question, is it necessarily problematic? You know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, well, this kind of like what makes... And we've been doing this air quotes thing the whole time, right? And this is actually a good point. What is real?
What is real? How do you define real?
What is reality? And if it's close enough, is it reality?
Yeah.
I wrote an article about this kind of topic last week, and as I was researching for it, I accidentally came across this like concept of the one-to-one map. Where
it's a deep rabbit hole, I heard.
It's a deep rabbit hole for like maybe 30 minutes or so. I was just reading into this concept.
It was longer than that, wasn't it?
About like, okay, so you've got, let's say the office, right? Let's say our office.
Yeah.
And if you created a perfect map of the office that was exactly the same scale, everything that was in the office was included in the map, isn't it just the office? Is it different? It's not, but for it to be the same, you would need to make a map of that map. And this is where the rabbit hole came from.
Is it like, when you say map, are you talking about like a digital...
Like a recreation?
Okay,
let's
imagine, a simulation.
Right? Yeah. Imagine that you created the exact office, right, in a simulated 3D space. It's exactly the same scale.
It's a representation of something that was external to the space that you're creating it in. But I don't know if that necessarily matters. You know what I mean? Like
well,
when
this
you're
is the
talking
thing,
about
right? Because reality is made up of stuff and representations
Allegedly.
of the stuff. And at what point is the representation of something just the same as the thing?
Yes. And Big E, Elon, has posited, as many other people have, that, it's a little bit too gigabrain for me to properly understand, but they say that it's not, super unlikely that we're living in a simulation right now. And then you look at stuff like creating a metaverse and you kind of go, I'm not like Elon, but I can kind of see how you get there.
I'm not sure that it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It all goes all the way back to Descartes.
For sure. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, you could talk about this for a long time. You could talk about this for hours. We have been talking. But I've just been given the tip tap. You've been going for too long message from our person behind the camera, Tommy. So, I guess we have to wrap it up for today.
For sure.
But you know what? If you want to hear us ramble about the metaverse again, you can. Or if you want to hear us talk about any other topic, you also can.
Yeah. Just click here.
Yeah, just click. Somewhere up there.
I don't think there is really going to be. Yeah. Cool.
But we're happy to get more people from the Oxen team and the session team to come on. So if you want to hear from somebody in particular, make sure that you let us know about that, and we'll get them in here to chat about pretty much whatever you want them to talk about.
We have a lot of sway. We can get them in here.
We have a lot of sway, we're well liked. Yeah. Anyway, so thank you for tuning in and listening to us talk about the metaverse today. It's obviously a really big issue. Lots of people are talking about it right now.
We'll revisit it from other angles as we go on in other episodes.
Absolutely.
If this continues.
And in the meantime, if you want to talk to us about it, make sure you hop on session. You can find me at A on session. Yes, that's right, just the letter A.
I am X2134B756. No.
Oh, wait, damn. So, or you can also subscribe to our channel here, follow us on Twitter. You'll be able to find us. Thank you very much.
Adios.